Is your vessel prepared for the next port state control inspection? What if your vessel is detained and cannot continue on schedule? If your ship is in working order, compliant with all legislation and safe, you will be complying with port state control requirements. If your ship is not, you may well end up having to experience a more detailed inspection, and your ship may be detained. This module will prepare you for any PSC, reducing the risk of detentions by outlining the methods used by PSC to identify substandard ships. You will also be introduced with an on-board approach that would lead to a successful PSC inspection. The checklist included in the module is the basis for the preparation for PSC inspection. All ships sailing in international waters are required to comply with the international codes and conventions put forth by the maritime authorities. For this, ships should be maintained at a particular standard by the combined efforts of flag states, shipping company, and ship's master. In order to ensure that the condition of foreign ships meets the requirements of the main IMO conventions, inspections are carried out when they visit international ports. This inspection of foreign ships is known as Port State Control, PSC. The regulation of Port State Control was brought in by the formation of the Paris Memorandum of Understanding, MOU, which includes standardized ship inspection procedures. Port State Control uses an internationally agreed system for the inspection of foreign vessels in other national ports by Port State Control officers, often referred to as PSCOs. The role of a PSCO is to investigate compliance with the requirements of international conventions, such as SOLAS, MARPOL, STCW, and the MLC. By inspecting vessels, Port State Control aims to eliminate the operation of substandard ships by harmonizing inspection. A ship will be deemed substandard if the hull, machinery, equipment, or operational safety is below required standards, or if the crew does not conform to the Safe Manning document. Port State Control organizations target high-risk vessels based on a number of factors, including time since last inspection, vessel type, and the age of the vessel. Frequency and thoroughness is based on the vessel's risk profile. Higher risk vessels will be inspected more often and in more depth than lower risk vessels. Depending upon the seriousness of the issues, the PSCO may detain a vessel. There are 4 types of inspection: initial, more detailed, expanded, and concentrated inspection campaigns. In an initial inspection, the PSCO aims to form a general impression of the vessel and check that the required documents and certificates to be carried are on board and valid. If the PSCO finds clear grounds, or if there are overriding or unexpected factors, these might lead to a more detailed inspection. If the PSCO finds that there are overriding or unexpected factors, then this would be clear grounds to conduct a more detailed inspection of areas of concern in greater depth. Certain vessel types over 12 years old will always be subject to expanded inspections, covering areas such as structural integrity, working and living conditions.
Concentrated inspection campaigns target specific convention areas over limited periods. Clear grounds and overriding or unexpected factors might lead to a more detailed inspection, even if they are not scheduled for one based on their risk profile. If enough deficiencies are found, or they are bad enough to pose a hazard to the ship, its personnel or the environment, the PSCO can detain a vessel until the deficiencies are rectified.
The targeting of a ship by Port State Control officers is mostly determined by the factors listed below. Answering yes to some or all of these questions will increase the likelihood of your ship being targeted for inspection. You can print the target criteria list on the following page.
Prior to leaving their office, the PSCO may well check with the port authorities to see if any report has been submitted by the pilot bringing the vessel into port. They may also check with the VTIS who monitored it. Any adverse report would create concerns before even boarding the vessel. On arrival at the dockside, the inspector would have a positive impression if the draft and load line are visible, particularly the deck line, which is often painted out. They would want to see no signs of extensive corrosion on the ship's side, accommodation, or underneath the handrails. There should also be no fouling. Lifeboats should appear clean and in good condition. The ship's name, port of registry, and the IMO number should be visible. Mooring ropes should be in good condition and properly tensioned. Funnel emissions should be normal, with no excessive smoke. And there should be no localized indentations in the shell plating or framing. When boarding, the inspector would expect the gangway to be properly rigged, with proper signage, safety netting, and a lifebuoy with light. They should be met and welcomed at the embarkation point, be taken through the required security procedure, and then escorted to the master's office. They will expect to see the master, officers, and crew dressed appropriately, with clean clothing and the correct PPE. They will also want personnel to be readily identifiable, with badges or names on boiler suits. At the very least, they will want to see ranks. The opening meeting should be held in a suitable business-like atmosphere, with all key personnel present, unless duties require otherwise. Any absentees should be explained and all key personnel involved in the inspection should be introduced to the inspector. They will also want to see that the inspection procedure is planned, with the escorting officer identified and made available when required.
The following are the most common deficiencies found by Port State Control. We would strongly recommend that you include the below items as part of your final checks prior to voyage and port entry. These checks will help to ensure that the items continue to conform to international convention requirements. You can print the list from the following screen.
After forming their initial impression of the vessel, PSCOs will typically inspect the vessel's certificates and documents. There are a few things that you can do on board to ensure that the inspection of documents goes smoothly. Firstly, it is important that there is an index system available for finding the documents quickly. All documents should be available in the room where the PSCO is carrying out the document check. This includes crew documents, such as copies of their employment contracts. A crew list should also be available to assist the PSCO checking the crew records.
Any condition of class issued by the vessel's classification society or letter from the flag state relating to an outstanding deficiency should be brought to the inspector's attention before the document inspection begins. If some certificates required by the port authorities are not on board, the PSCO would want to see copies, with endorsement pages and a signed receipt by the agent. This receipt should be annotated as to why they are not on board, who has them, and the contact details of the agent or organisation holding them. When examining the documents, the inspector would expect to see that all certificates are valid and in date, with endorsements completed correctly. The PSCO will expect any manuals or documents that require approval to have a classification society approval stamp. They will also want to see that crew documentation is complete and valid for the vessel on which they are serving. It must also meet STCW requirements. The inspector will also check all other documents that provide evidence that the vessel is being operated in accordance with the required international rules, including the last PSC inspection report. If there are no concerns when the inspection of documents is completed, the planned inspection will go ahead. However, if certificates or documents are missing or invalid, this might be clear grounds for a more detailed inspection, particularly in areas that raise questions about the way the vessel is being operated. For example, if the training records or logbooks indicate that training or drills have not been carried out, or not been carried out properly, the PSCO may insist on a drill being conducted.
After the PSCO has inspected the documents and certificates on board, they will then inspect the vessel itself and the crew that operate it. During inspection, it's important to create a good impression on the PSCO, so that a more detailed inspection is not required. Generally, this will include a clean, tidy and hygienic vessel with visible signs that maintenance has been carried out, such as greased fire flap hinges. There should be no major oil leaks, excessive corrosion or structural damage. When inspecting the bridge, the inspector will want to see that it is orderly and clean, with evidence that the vessel has been navigated safely. A random examination should show that nautical publications, charts and ECDIS electronic navigational chart cells are up to date. The passage plan from the previous voyage should be comprehensive, from berth to berth, and the inspector should see that it has been followed. Any deviations of the magnetic compass should not be excessive, and there should be evidence that the bridge wing gyro repeaters are used regularly. Lastly, GMDSS equipment should be operating normally on main and emergency power, with records completed as required. When inspecting the accommodation and galley, the PSCO expects to see clean and sanitary conditions, with no signs of infestation. They want to see food stored hygienically, at the correct temperature, with systems in place to avoid cross-contamination. There should be no out-of-date drugs in the medical facilities, and they should be available as per the drugs inventory. Lastly, the PSCO will want to see that the garbage is disposed of correctly and segregated as necessary. When inspecting the deck, the PSCO will expect to see that the vessel is structurally sound and that the freeboard equipment is in good condition and can be watertight or weathertight as required. They will want to see no evidence of excessive corrosion of the structure, including the handrails, and that the deck is clean and free of grease and oil. Air pipes and vents must be in good, rust-free condition. The PSCO will want to see that fire dampers and watertight closing devices can be fully and readily closed without too much effort. Similarly, the seals for watertight and weathertight openings, hatches and doors must be intact and in good condition. Lastly, the PSCO will want to see that firefighting equipment, lifeboats and other life-saving appliances are in good condition with evidence that they are well maintained and serviced. When inspecting the engine room, the PSCO will expect to see that it is clean, well lit and tidy. There should be no evidence of fire risks or willful oil pollution, and it should be free of major oil leaks and oily rags. Any lagging around pipes carrying hot oil, steam or water must be in good condition and not oil soaked. Bilges should be empty of free oil. Firefighting equipment must be in good condition and machinery should appear in a safe and well-maintained condition. Lastly, the PSCO should see evidence that the oily water separator has been operated correctly and that there are no illegal pipework connections. When inspecting your vessel, the PSCO will expect to see no violations of MARPOL that could result in water or air pollution. After checking the Oil Record Book Part 1, the PSCO would expect to verify that the engine room 15 ppm oily water separator has been operated correctly and is working properly. On tankers, the PSCO will also check Part 2 of the Oil Record Book, and they would expect to see the oil discharge monitoring equipment to ensure there have been no unauthorized discharges. Deficiencies do occur on board vessels.
Hold on.
Things wear out and equipment sometimes fails unexpectedly.
Not sure why that's missing.
Deficiencies can also be caused by poor design or poor maintenance. As inspections can take place at any time, it's essential that we respond to deficiencies as quickly as possible. Any equipment that affects the safety of the ship, the completeness of life-saving equipment, or is required by IMO conventions, must be repaired as soon as possible if it is found to be defective. If it cannot be repaired and we do not have the spares, technical ability or time available to do so on board, this must be reported to the master as soon as possible. The master will then communicate with the vessel's superintendent, who will contact the Flag State and Classification Society and propose a temporary solution that provides equivalent measures. In port, it might also be necessary for the superintendent to contact the agent, who will arrange for a specialist technician to visit the ship. If the vessel is in port, any condition on the outstanding deficiency letter issued by the Flag State should be made available to the PSCO prior to the inspection. A time limit will be issued with such a letter, and the conditions of the letter must be strictly complied with. During an inspection, the PSCO might also discover that equipment is missing, not functional, or appears in poor condition. If this happens, you should be totally cooperative. If you are aware that corrective action is being taken, inform the PSCO. Any defect related to compliance with conventions should be corrected immediately or as soon as possible. Do not speculate as to the cause or assume corrective action if you don't know. But if you are able to correct the deficiency, arrange to do so in a purposeful and confident manner. Once the inspection is complete, the master will receive an inspection report from the PSCO, who should act according to the Code of Practice for PSCOs whilst on board your vessel. This may include seeking advice when they are unsure of a requirement or of their findings, rather than making uninformed decisions. The PSCO should also accommodate the operational needs of the port and the ship, where it is safe to do so. At the end of the inspection, the PSCO should clearly explain their findings and the corrective actions required to the master, ensuring the report of inspection is clearly understood. The report will look something like this. Here, Form B highlights deficiencies, the convention affected, and the action required. Deficiencies are coded with 5 or 6 digits, while actions required are coded with 2 digits. Once the deficiency report has been issued, the master and senior officers should check that the deficiencies are correct. If the deficiencies do not reflect the situation on board, the PSCO should be challenged politely and calmly to reconsider in view of the evidence or re-inspection. A request should then be made for the deficiencies to be deleted from Form B. The vessel superintendent should be advised in case of any dispute. The PSCO should deal with any disagreement over the conduct or findings of the inspection calmly and patiently, asking for clarification. The PSCO should then advise the master of the complaint's procedure if the disagreement cannot be resolved within a reasonable time. They should also advise the master of the appeal procedure, as well as the national right of appeal in the case of a detention. A suitable officer should be chosen to escort the PSCO. They must be knowledgeable about the ship's equipment and the area being inspected, so that they can answer questions with confidence and authority. Different escorting officers will be needed for different areas. Newly joined officers who are not familiar with the ship should not be chosen. If you are chosen as the escorting officer, ensure you are aware of any permits or operational conditions that might limit what the inspector might ask to be demonstrated. Wear all appropriate PPE and carry a flashlight, pencil and paper. It is also useful to carry a portable radio for support in dealing with queries or correcting defects. The PSCO will ask the escorting officer various questions. They do this for a number of reasons. First, they hope to gain a better understanding of the way the ship is managed and operated. They want to assess the understanding of English or the common language. They also want to assess the officer's competence, knowledge and proficiency for their position as required by STCW and the SMS. They may also ask about defects discovered during a previous PSC inspection and subsequently corrected, even if it was at a different port or region. When answering these questions, answer confidently and politely. Speak slowly and clearly, and in a manner that does not mislead the inspector. If you are unsure about what you are being asked, repeat the question or ask for it to be repeated.
What would be your immediate reaction on hearing the general alarm?
Excuse, can you repeat more slowly?
Sure. What would you do if you hear...
When demonstrating equipment or recounting procedures, the inspector will expect you to demonstrate behaviors that satisfy them, that you are familiar with the task. First, ensure it is safe to operate the equipment and that you have permission to operate it. Check that it is safe to enter a particular space. In either case, you may require a permit. Adopt a position where the inspector can see you and the equipment. Speak slowly, clearly and confidently, giving the impression that what is being asked is something you are used to. Explain what you are doing, ensuring it follows the instructions for use, and explain what you might expect to happen next. Avoid hesitation or looking surprised. If something doesn't work, don't try something else. Don't mumble, scratch your head, or otherwise give the impression that you are unfamiliar with the equipment. The vessel's SMS will guide the PSCO on what you might be asked to explain or perform. You should not be asked to demonstrate anything for which you are not competent. However, if you are asked, it is perfectly acceptable to say so with the reason why. As you've just seen, having a ship that is in good order is key. But there are times when interpersonal skills will make even a difficult inspection easier. Here are 10 useful tips to help POC inspection go more smoothly.